Hey, this is part 4 of our teaching series on asking for a friend, and today's topic is how can we trust the Bible? The Bible is the main way for the follower of Christ to know God. It's a book of guidance, information, and hope. And we could say that most, if not all, that we do as followers of Christ is due to the instruction in the Bible. If this book is what we model our lives after, shouldn't we know more about it? So in this video, we're going to talk about 3 topics in which we'll cover the reliability and the accuracy of the Bible. There are many reasons for me to have the hope that I have in Jesus. But one of the major reasons that I decided to continue to follow Jesus is knowing the indisputable reliability and accuracy of the Bible. I had the privilege of taking a class during Bible college to learn about these things, and I'm aware that many of us in our congregation may not have that privilege, and we decided to talk about it in this series. So just a warning, there's a lot of information here and I'm going to blow through it because I don't have a lot of time, but the truth of it, it's just going to be so good. So please try to take notes, pay attention. Now, some of you may say, I already believe in God. I'm not changing my mind. Why do I need to know this? Well, with this video, I want to show you why it's important to know these facts, why it's important to know why you believe that the Bible is true. So 2 Timothy 2:15 says, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who does not need to be ashamed and who correctly handles the word of truth. So all of us, not just the preachers, have to do our best to present ourselves as an approved worker, someone who can handle correctly and understand the word of God. So even if you have faith, God may be wanting you to represent Him, to be a witness, to advocate for the reliability of His word, because honestly, we can't just say, I believe it because I believe it. There's no bad reason why I shouldn't believe the Bible. We have to know why we believe that the Bible is an accurate and reliable source. So the first topic is, how did the Bible come about? The Bible was written by approximately 40 men of diverse backgrounds over the course of 1,500 years. In 2 Timothy 3:16, it says that the Bible was breathed out by God. So while using their own writing styles and personalities, they still recorded exactly what God intended them to. The Bible wasn't dictated by God, but it was perfectly guided and entirely inspired by Him. So really briefly here, I want to talk about the time span of the Bible. The Bible, as you may know, is split into 2 sections. We have the Old Testament and we have the New Testament. They're not quite entirely, the Bible's not entirely split in half. Actually, it's more like this because there's 39 books of the Old Testament and 27 books in the New Testament. The earliest writings, Genesis, Exodus, and such, written by Moses, were written around the year 1400 BC. While the later writings, like Revelation or the Gospel of John, were written, speculated, around the year 90 AD, running out of space. So you see here these 1,500 years we're talking about is the time span of the writings of the Bible. That doesn't mean that that's when these things took place. It just means that's when they were written. We have 1,500 years of letters and books and writings compiled into what we know today as the Bible. Now with that, I want to move on to the next topic, which is reliability. And on this, I want to focus on the New Testament for a little bit. It's constantly under attack. Its reliability and accuracy are contested by a lot of critics. But there's ample evidence, loads of evidence, and we're just going to go over a few amounts of that, that show that the New Testament is a superior text. Its reliability is over all other ancient documents. If the critics want to disregard the New Testament, then they also have to disregard the ancient writings of Plato, Aristotle, or Homer. I'm sure you've heard of them. They teach them in school as if they were real and everything they say is a fact. But this is because the New Testament documents are better preserved that I get to say that these writings of the New Testament, the Bible, have way more accuracy, reliability than any of these writings. And I want to talk about that here for a little bit. Let's look at the writings of Plato. Really briefly here, we have Plato. His writings took place around the years of 427 or 347 BC, which means here that the earliest writing we have of him is in 900 AD. What does that mean? It means that from the time that he wrote to the time that we have an earliest copy, there's 1,200 years unaccounted. 1,200 years from when he wrote his writings that he's famous for, that we still teach in schools today. 1,200 years from when he wrote it to when we have the earliest copy, not the original, just copies of them. And even then, there's only 7 copies of it. There's no way to really prove that a document is reliable or accurate if we only have 7 copies of it, and there's 1,200 years in between when it was actually written. We can't really consider that a viable source, but they do for Plato. That's interesting. Well, let's move on. Let's say we look at Homer, who wrote the Iliad, very famous writing. You can find it at any library, I'm sure. He wrote his writings around 900 BC. Earliest copy we have is 400 BC. So there is 500 years between the time that he wrote it to when we have the earliest copy. Now we have way more copies here than with Plato. We have 643 copies, which allows him to have a 95% accuracy. I know, a lot of numbers. Here's what this means. They have so many more copies that within all these copies, they are 95% accurate to each other. There's not that many errors. 95% is a really great percentage. So the Iliad by Homer is a way more viable source of information than Plato's writings. Homer's writings, again, are truth. They're in libraries. They are not disputed by anyone. Their authenticity is not disputed by anyone. Well, now let's look at the numbers in the Bible. We have the New Testament written between 50 and 100 AD, which is the times during the times of Jesus. The earliest writing we have is 130 AD. That's less than 100 years from when the events happened and when they were written to the earliest copy that we have is less than 100 years. Now, we don't have the originals, but we have copies that are less than 100 years old. And the craziest part, we have 5,600 copies. Those are so many more copies than Homer's Iliad at 643, and giving us the percentage of 99.5% of accuracy within itself, meaning that of all the 5,600 writings that we have of the New Testament, they are 99.5% accurate. There's no discrepancies. Maybe some wrong commas or periods or letters in the wrong place, but nothing fundamentally off about the writings. And on this, I want to talk about accuracy. Accuracy refers to the truthfulness of the content of the record, in this case, the New Testament. Because they're so numerous, the New Testament can be cross-checked for accuracy, and it's very consistent. There are thousands more New Testament Greek manuscripts than any other ancient writing. Let me say that again. There are thousands more New Testament Greek manuscripts than any other ancient writing. The internal consistency of the New Testament documents is 99.5% textually pure. And this is an amazing accuracy, not found in many other forms of literature. In addition to these 5,600, there are 19,000 copies of the New Testament in Syriac, Latin, Coptic, and Aramaic languages. So the total supporting numbers of the New Testament is over 24,000. It is just an amazing amount more than all of these other works that we see that people claim to be more real, more accurate than the Bible. In fact, there's a fragment of the Gospel of John that dates back to 29 years from the original writing. This is called John Ryland's Papyri, or P52. This is extremely close to the original writing date, and it's just unheard of, and an ancient writing to be so close to the original. And I know this document here doesn't look like much, it's just a little part, but it's still the only manuscript that is this close to the original. So if the critics want to dismiss the Bible, dismiss the New Testament as reliable information, then they are also willing to dismiss the reliability of the writings of Plato, Aristotle, Caesar, Homer, and other authors that are on the list. On the other hand, if the critics acknowledge the historicity and writings of those other individuals, then that means that they must also acknowledge the historicity and writings of the New Testament authors. After all, evidence for the New Testament's reliability is far greater than any other. The Christian has substantially superior criteria for affirming the New Testament documents than he does for any other ancient writing. It's good evidence on which to base the trust and reliability of the New Testament. Now, I am aware that this was a lot of information. And honestly, it's just a small fraction of the evidence we have available to us to trust the Bible as God's trusted and faithful word. Having faith in God is enough for salvation. Knowing all these things is not necessary. But the reason we share these things as a church, as a leadership, because we believe that we have to equip you to have a confident, confident faith. You need to know these things. You should know these things to be able to defend your faith, to be able to defend the Bible. 1 Peter 3:15 says, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." In all the conversations you have with others about your faith, we are called to be a representative of God, yes, but remember, also a representative of His love and of His gentleness. On this topic, I could keep going for hours. I promise you I could, but I won't. We're going to end it here. And we hope that this information, while it is just information, helps you, it reassures you to trust the Bible more as a reliable source of truth and as a guide in your life. We'll see you next week.